All right, let's go ahead and get started. Now, in this lecture, I want you to become acquainted with Xcode. This is the tool that we're going to be using throughout the rest of this course. This is going to become your new best friend, so I want to give you a nice, proper walkthrough. So we just spent all that time downloading it. Let's go ahead and open it up. There's a couple of ways to do this. So you could go ahead and do this through the Launchpad. You couldn't see it, but the little rocket ship icon that you usually see in your dock can show all your applications. You can also just click on Finder here, and you could, manually go to your applications and open it up. But my favorite way to open up Xcode or any other applications, this is one of my favorite Mac pro tips, is if you hit the command and the space bar. Command is just to the side of the space bar on either side. You can get the spotlight search. So you just hit command space bar, and all of a sudden you just start typing in Xcode, and bam, you can get the program you need and open it up. Now, I'm going to be using Xcode Beta because that's what's available at the time of filming right now. If you're watching this during the summer months, you also want to use Xcode Beta. But if you're watching basically any time from September onward, make sure you're using the official version of Xcode that you get from the Mac App Store. And if you're wondering, is that one out? Well, in the previous section, if I had walked you through the process of getting the version that's out and no longer in beta, then that's there. If not, go ahead and use Xcode Beta. So we'll go ahead and get this opened up. You'll see this is the welcome screen to Xcode, and I just kind of want to walk you through what we have here. On the right side are going to be some recent projects that you've been working on. If it's your first time, you're not going to see anything here. But down here, these are the really two big important things. You can either get started with a playground, which is a really great way to learn Swift. In fact, we're going to be diving into this soon. And the next one is creating a new Xcode project. So if you want to make an app as it lists here, for an iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, Apple TV, whatever it is, you start right here with creating a new Xcode project. Now, this clone an existing project, I have not used this button once in my more than 8 years being an iOS developer, so you really don't have to worry about that one. So with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and do this create a new Xcode project. We're just going to make a nice, fun, simple app so that we can sort of learn the basics of Xcode and how it works, and we'll go hand in hand with learning some Swift via a playground, but for now, let's go ahead and create a new project. So when you do this, it's going to bring up a little page that says, hey, what kind of project do you want to make? And up at the top, these are the different platforms that we have. So iOS, this is going to be any, iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch kind of app. WatchOS, this is for Apple Watch, tvOS for the TV. I think you're catching on there. macOS for the desktop. And then there's cross-platform, which is basically if you want to make a game that works across multiples of these. But we're focusing on iOS. We want to make iOS apps. So within here, there's lots of different template apps that you can start with. Apple will sort of get you started on the right foot. We just want the single view application. This is essentially the blank starting point for almost every app that we're going to make. So let's go ahead and just double click on that. It's going to ask for a name here. Because we're just sort of messing around, we're going to be learning Swift for the very first time. I'm just going to call ours Swift Fun. Feel free to name it whatever you'd like, but I'm going to call it Swift Fun. Now, as far as team goes, you don't need to worry about this. This is eventually later if you want to upload your app to the App Store or test it on your own physical device. You can always come back and change that later. Really, all the settings here, you can come back and change these at any point in time, so don't feel like anything you've entered here is just cemented forever. This isn't really a high-pressure screen here. Organization name, this is usually just your own personal name. This organization identifier, again, this really only matters when you're going to submit something to the App Store. The typical process that people do is if you have your own website, you do the opposite of the whole URL, so com.zappycode instead of zappycode.com. So if you had your own personal website, you could do that like com.nickwalter or whatever your name is, right? If you don't have one of these, I would just simply do like your first dot last name like this. That's going to be fine enough. But I've got zappycode.com, so I'll go ahead and leave that there. For language, make sure we have Swift selected here, and we don't want any of these boxes checked, so just go ahead and leave those all blank for now. Hit this next button. It's going to ask you, where do you want to save this new project? I'm going to put ours just on the desktop here. As for the source control, you can make a Git repository for your app, which basically will help you sort of save different versions of your app. And if you want to collaborate with people, Git is a little bit outside of the scope of this bootcamp, but just go ahead and usually leave this checked. That's a good practice. You can always come back and change that at any point in time. But I just wanted to explain what that is. And again, this isn't mission critical. If you leave this checked or unchecked, it's not going to break your app or anything like that. But we'll go ahead and hit create there. That will make a new project for us. And if you're wondering, well, what really is a project? Well, let me walk you through that. And if I just sort of move Xcode over here to the side for a second, you can see a new folder has been added to our desktop called Swift Fun. So let's go ahead and open it. You can see what's inside. It's kind of funny. So there's a folder called Swift Fun, or whatever you named your project. And inside there's a swiftfun.xcode project, and then another folder called Swift Fun with more files inside of that. So that's a little bit confusing. Whenever you make a new project, it'll take the name of your project, put that in a folder, have another folder with that same name, and like, this project file. This Xcode project file, this is basically the starting point. Like if we went ahead and closed out Xcode and you just wanted to open up your project to work on it, if you double click this, it will open up Xcode and bring in all your files there. And basically these are all just sort of template starting points for creating an app. This is sort of the blank version that we need to get the bare minimum rolling here, and we'll walk through eventually all the different steps here of what it is that we're going to need. Now, within this, I'll kind of take you a little bit on a tour here. So navigating Xcode, there's lots of different panels and things going on here. If you ever want to hide or show them, these three buttons up at the top right, can take the right menu, bring it on or off. Same thing with the bottom here. You can see it comes up and down, and that left menu, same situation there. So depending on when we need these, and you'll just kind of, I think, get into a good flow as you watch me and I do this to see when you should have those open or closed. These little bars up top here, really all you need to know is this is going to be a full screen editing experience. You can hit the circles here to have a split screen. This is really only going to become relevant when we're going to be doing some code eventually where we are going to connect like a button to say, hey, when we tap on this button, we want X, Y, and Z to happen. But that's beyond where we are now. So usually you should just always have this here in full screen mode, but there might be some situations that you're going to want to have that changed. Over here on the left side, you can see this holds all the files that our project contains. In fact, if I open up Finder here, you can see like the contents of this folder are basically listed inside of here. And so these should pretty much mirror each other right here. And as far as these files go, this is going to be like the code that makes up our app. A big one here is going to be this main.storyboard. This is where all the visual part of our code happens. So whenever we want to like add a button to our app or do something else there, it's all going to happen inside of this main.storyboard. There's some Swift files here. You can see like viewcontroller.swift, appdelegate.swift. This is where we're actually going to be typing out some code to make things happen. And then there's some other settings here like assets. This is going to hold images that we have. For the launch screen, we could do some custom visual things so when the app first opens up, we can show the user something. And this info.plist, kind of think of this as sort of the top level settings for your app. So you can change like the app name, and if you're submitting to the App Store, you'll want to do some different changes here for like what version of your app that you're submitting and whatnot. Really the last part that I'd like to show you over here on the left side menu is this project. So if you go ahead and click on this again, here are more settings that you can apply to your app. For example, you know how we had selected team to none, you could go back and change this at some point when you want to submit this to the App Store and whatnot. But there you have it. That's kind of a little simple walkthrough of Xcode. Over here on this left side menu, there's lots of different options here. We're going to mostly be using this folder view to see what's inside of our app. These other ones inside of here, like if you want to search through your project, you can go ahead and do that there. I don't know why I was searching for mother last time I had my search open apparently. But here when our apps are running, you can see like any errors that are going to be happening, and you can do tests. There's all sorts of different things here, but really we're going to be working mostly with this to sort of navigate around through our app. One last thing that I'd like to touch on real quick before we move on to the next one is you can see the size of my code is quite big. right? Like, and for you, I'm making it big so that you can read what I'm doing. I'm going to try and manage this to make sure that you can see the most on the screen there. And I'm going to, adjust the size of this so that you can get to see the most code. But if you'd ever like to change the size of your own font, go ahead and go up to Xcode and then Preferences. Inside of this, if you go to the Fonts and Color tab here, you can change the theme of Xcode. And so there's all sorts of different types here. Basic, this is probably what yours started up like. It's probably the same as mine, just mine looks much smaller than yours probably. But there's other ones here. There's Civic, Default Dark, Default Light, Dusk, Low Key, all sorts of different things. And you can customize any of these that you want. I made this one called Presentation 2 that's extra big so that you can see all the code that I'm typing out here. But feel free to use the one that you'd like. Personally, my favorite here is Dusk. I think this is kind of the coolest theme. It's easy on the eyes. But for teaching purposes, I'm going to keep it on Presentation 2 so you can see this nice and big in sort of the standard way. But anyways, I wanted you to make sure that you can get the right fonts and colors here so you feel more at home, right? Like, as I sort of said at the beginning, Xcode is what we're going to be using throughout this whole boot camp and what you will use all the time as an iOS developer. So you really want to feel comfortable with it and feel like it's your home. Okay, well, enough with sort of this walkthrough here. In the next one, we're going to start creating our very first app, and then we're going to dive into learning some Swift.